The massive alien ship emerged from the darkness of space, its silver hull reflecting Jupiter's orange glow. The vessel, nearly 2 miles long, moved with impossible grace for its size as it approached the human space station. Inside the station's observation deck, Captain James Reeves stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the approaching ship with an expression that betrayed nothing but polite interest. "Magnificent, isn't it?" he asked the small group of officers gathered around him. None of them showed fear or anxiety, just the same calm curiosity that their captain displayed. Through the window, they could see the alien ship's name written in both their language and English. Starweaver. The station's lights dimmed briefly as the alien vessel connected to their main docking port. Reed checked his uniform one last time, straightened his collar, and walked toward the airlock. His footsteps echoed in the metal corridor, steady and unhurried. The rest of the welcoming party followed behind him, their movements just as measured. The airlock cycled with a soft hiss. As the door opened, Reed found himself face to face with Ambassador Val of the Galactic Council. The alien stood nearly 7 feet tall, with smooth gray skin that seemed to shimmer under the station's lights. 4 arms were folded across its chest in what Reed's briefing had told him was a gesture of peaceful greeting. "Welcome to Jupiter Station 1, Reed said, his voice warm and professional. "I'm Captain James Reed. We're honored to be humanity's representatives for this historic moment." Ambassador Val's large dark eyes studied Reed carefully. "The honor is ours, Captain," the alien said in perfect English, "thanks to their translation technology. Though I must admit, we're quite surprised by your composure. Most species we contact exhibit more pronounced reactions to first contact." Reed smiled. It was the kind of smile that reached his eyes but went no deeper. Humanity has always dreamed of meeting other civilizations among the stars. Now that dream has come true. Why should we be afraid? The ambassador's helpers, a team of researchers and diplomats, moved forward to greet the other humans. They carried devices that blinked and hummed, taking readings of everything around them. If the humans noticed, they didn't show it. "Please, allow us to show you around," Reed said, gesturing down the corridor. "We've prepared a tour that should give you a good overview of our operations here." As they walked through the station, Ambassador Val couldn't help but notice how everything seemed perfectly arranged for their visit. The humans had prepared visual displays of their history, their technological progress, their peaceful exploration of their solar system. It was almost too perfect, too neat. "Your advancement in space travel is remarkable," Val said, pausing before a timeline showing humanity's journey to the stars. "To achieve so much in such a short time." "We're quick learners," Reed replied with that same measured smile. "And we're eager to learn more, to see what the galaxy has to teach us." One of Val's researchers, a younger alien named Kerr, whispered something in their native language. Val's expression shifted slightly, the equivalent of a raised eyebrow in human terms. "Is something wrong?" Reed asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Not at all," Val said. "My colleague was just noting some interesting patterns in your station's design. There are elements that seem familiar, yet uniquely adapted." Reed nodded. "We believe great minds often think alike, Ambassador. Perhaps there are universal principles of engineering that all spacefaring races discover." The tour continued through laboratories, living quarters, and command centers. At each stop, the humans answered questions with perfect clarity, never hesitating, never showing uncertainty. They demonstrated their technology with pride, but also with an underlying humility that suggested they knew they had much to learn. As the tour came to an end, Val turned to Reed. "Captain, the Galactic Council looks forward to sharing knowledge with humanity. We have much to teach you." "And we have much to learn," Reed replied, that same careful smile still in place. He watched as the alien delegation prepared to return to their ship, their devices full of data about the human station and its inhabitants. Only after the airlock closed behind them Did Reed's smile change slightly? He touched a small communication device on his wrist and spoke softly. Phase 1 complete. They saw exactly what we wanted them to see. In the darkness of space, Jupiter's storms raged on, unaware of the greater storm that was beginning to brew in the galaxy above. Dr. Kerr sat in the dimly lit research chamber aboard the Starweaver, surrounded by floating screens showing Earth's history. As the ship's lead xenoanthropologist, they had studied dozens of species, but something about humans didn't add up. The screens showed centuries of human progress, from simple steam engines to space travel in less than 300 years. "Computer, show me the development timeline again," Kerr said, rubbing their tired eyes. The screen shifted, displaying a chart of human technological advancement. The line curved upward at an angle that seemed to defy all known patterns of species development. A soft chime announced Ambassador Val's arrival. "Still working, Dr. Kerr. It's been 3 days since our visit to the station." "Something's wrong with these numbers," Kerr said, pointing to the screens. "Look at how humans adapted our water purification technology. We gave them the basic system last week. They've already improved it by 30%. Val moved closer to the displays, their 4 arms crossed in thought. "Perhaps they're simply gifted engineers." "No species is this gifted," Kerr replied, pulling up more data. "When we gave them our basic space drive designs, they didn't just copy them. They started asking questions about advanced concepts we haven't even mentioned yet. It's as if they already knew what to look for." The screens flickered as new information came in from Earth. Human engineers had just submitted a request for collaboration on quantum communication technologies. The request included detailed questions about principles that humans shouldn't even know existed. "Watch this," Kerr said, playing a recording from the Jupiter station. In it, Captain Reed and his team were examining alien medical equipment. Their questions were precise, targeted, as if they were confirming things they already knew rather than learning something new. Val leaned forward, their expression troubled. "Have you noticed anything else unusual?" "Their adaptation to space is all wrong," Kerr said, bringing up biological data. "Humans adjust to zero gravity faster than any species we've encountered. Their bodies adapt to radiation exposure in ways that seem almost practiced." A junior researcher named Tep entered the chamber, carrying new data crystals. "Dr. Kerr, I've finished analyzing the human internet archives you requested." "And?" Kerr asked, not looking away from the screens. "They're science fiction. They're stories about space. Some of them describe technologies with surprising accuracy. Technologies they shouldn't have known about. They wrote about quantum entanglement before they split the atom." Val moved to a different screen, studying Earth's satellite network. "They're expanding their presence in their solar system very strategically. Each new station, each colony seems positioned according to some pattern we can't quite see." Kerr nodded, pulling up a star chart. "I've overlaid their planned expansion routes with known space lanes. They're choosing paths that give them access to key strategic points. But if you ask them, they'd tell you it's all about resource efficiency." "Could they have had contact with other species before us?" Tep asked. "We've checked. There's no evidence of previous contact," Val replied. And yet they act like they've done this all before," Kerr finished. "They're too comfortable with us, too ready for everything we show them. It's like they're following a script." The screens changed again as new data arrived. Humans had just proposed a modification to the Galactic Council's standard translation matrix. Their suggestion would improve efficiency by 40%. "We need to dig deeper," Kerr said, their voice firm. "Something's hidden in their history, in their development. These humans are playing a game, but I can't see the board yet." Val moved toward the door, then paused. "Be careful with your investigation, Dr. Kerr. If humans are hiding something, they've hidden it well. And they're watching us just as carefully as we're watching them." As if to emphasize the ambassador's point, a message appeared on the main screen. Another invitation from Captain Reed for a cultural exchange session. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Kerr stared at the message, then at the countless screens of data surrounding them. Somewhere in this ocean of information was the truth about humanity. They just had to find it before it was too late, though Kerr had a growing suspicion that it might already be. The holographic map of the solar system floated in the center of the Starweaver's observation deck. Red dots marked every human settlement, station, and outpost, forming a web of lights that stretched from Mercury to the Kuiper Belt. Officer Tepp stood before it, watching as another red dot appeared, a new mining station near Saturn's rings. "That's the third new outpost this month," Dr. Kerr said, walking around the display. Each one perfectly placed, perfectly timed. They reached out, touching points on the map. "Look at the spacing between them. It's like a net being woven across space." Through the observation deck's window, Earth shone like a blue jewel. Ships moved around it in careful patterns, human vessels mixing with alien craft as if they'd been doing this dance for centuries instead of months. A message chimed on their screens. Captain Reed was requesting permission to dock at the Starweaver again, this time bringing data about human deep space exploration plans. The timing made Kerr's skin tingle with suspicion. "Let them come," Ambassador Val said from the doorway. "Perhaps we'll see something new this time." When Reed's shuttle docked an hour later, he brought his usual team and his usual calm smile. They laid out their plans on the Starweaver's conference table, detailed maps showing future human expansion routes. "We're particularly interested in this region," Reed said, pointing to a cluster of stars. "Our surveys suggest rich mineral deposits." Kerr watched Reed's face carefully. The human captain pointed to exactly the spots they had predicted he would, following the pattern they'd begun to see. But why these specific locations? What made them so special? After the meeting, Kerr pulled up older star charts, ancient maps from the Galactic Council's archives. They overlaid them with the human expansion plans, and for a moment, their hearts seemed to stop. The human routes traced old trade lanes that hadn't been used in millions of years, paths that weren't even in the Council's current records. "Look at this," they called to Tepp, who was analyzing data nearby. "These human colonies, they're not just random points in space. They're forming a network, like a spider's web. But the web has gaps in it, specific gaps, as if they're leaving space for something." Tepp moved closer, his eyes widening. "The gaps, they're all at points where old space lanes intersect, lanes that existed before the current Council." On the main screen, another request came in from Earth. They wanted to establish a new research station near a seemingly empty region of space. But when Kerr checked the ancient charts again, that empty region had once held something important, something that had been forgotten for eons. "They're not exploring," Kerr whispered. "They're reclaiming." The observation deck fell silent as the implications sank in. Every human move, every casual request, every friendly meeting, all of it felt calculated now, like pieces being moved on an invisible game board. A junior researcher rushed in, holding a datapad. "Dr. Kerr, we found something in the human genetic records. Their DNA, it's not just evolving, it's remembering." Kerr took the pad, scanning the results. Human DNA showed signs of artificial manipulation, but not recent manipulation. The changes were ancient, coded into their genes so deeply that they looked natural now. But the patterns were there, waiting to be read by someone who knew what to look for. Through the window, Earth continued its peaceful spin. Human ships moved between the planets, each one following those careful, precise routes. They were building something out here in the void, something huge and invisible, and they were using the Galactic Council's own protocols to do it. "They want us to see this," Kerr said finally. "They're not hiding their pattern. They're showing it to us, piece by piece. But why?" Ambassador Val stepped closer to the holographic display. "Perhaps the real question is, what happens when the pattern is complete?" As if in answer, another message arrived from Captain Reed. The humans were requesting permission to establish 5 new outposts, each one filling another carefully chosen gap in their cosmic web. And as always, their timing was perfect, too perfect to be chance. In the darkness between the stars, an ancient plan was unfolding, and humanity was at its center. They moved with the confidence of those who knew exactly where they were going and what they would find when they got there. Officer Tep wasn't supposed to be in the communication lab this late. The Starweaver's night cycle had begun hours ago, and most of the crew was asleep. But something about the human transmissions kept bothering him. They were too clean, too perfect, like they were meant to be found. His fingers moved across the holographic controls, sifting through the endless stream of data between human colonies. On the surface, it was all normal. Supply requests, personal messages, scientific data. But beneath that, a light flashed on his screen, an encrypted transmission bouncing between 3 human outposts near Jupiter. The encryption wasn't very complex. In fact, it seemed designed to draw attention, like a bright flag waving in the dark. "Computer, decode this signal," Tep said softly. The screen filled with numbers and letters, forming patterns that made his head spin. He was about to give up when he noticed something odd, a repeated sequence hidden in the noise. Dr. Kerr's voice made him jump. "You found something." Tep turned to find the xenanthropologist standing in the doorway, looking more tired than ever. "I think so. Look at this pattern. The humans are hiding messages inside their regular transmissions, but they're not trying very hard to hide them," Kerr finished, moving closer to the screen. "They want us to find these. The question is, why?" The pattern expanded across the screen, revealing more layers. Each human colony was passing these hidden messages along, creating a web of communication that spanned the solar system. But the messages themselves were strange. Fragments of data that seemed meaningless alone. "It's like they're building something," Tep said, pulling up more decoded transmissions. "Each colony adds its own piece to the message before passing it on. But building what?" Ambassador Val entered the lab, drawn by the late-night activity. "Another discovery." Kerr pointed to the screen. "The humans aren't just expanding physically. They're creating an information network, hiding it in plain sight. But look at the content. Star charts, quantum equations, genetic codes. Things they shouldn't even know about yet." Val studied the data with all 4 eyes. "This goes beyond simple technology sharing. These equations, some of them look like theoretical work from advanced council races, work we haven't shared with Earth." A new transmission appeared on the screen. This one came from Captain Reed's station near Jupiter. The message was simple, an invitation for a cultural exchange meeting the next day. But hidden within it was a complex set of coordinates pointing to locations across the galaxy. "They're not even trying to hide anymore," Tep said, his voice shaking slightly. "It's like they want us to put the pieces together." Kerr pulled up the star map, plotting the coordinates from Reed's hidden message. They formed a pattern that matched ancient trade routes, routes that hadn't been used since before the current Galactic Council existed. Every transmission, every new colony, every friendly meeting, Kerr muttered. "They're all part of something bigger. The humans are building a framework right under our noses, using our own presence to help them do it." Val moved to the main console, accessing the Council's secure database. "We need to compare these patterns with our historical records. If humans somehow knew about these ancient routes..." The computer chimed, interrupting them. Another message from Earth. They were requesting permission to establish a quantum communication hub near Saturn. The plans they submitted were perfect, too perfect, as if they'd built such hubs many times before. "We're missing something fundamental here," Kerr said, staring at the screens full of decoded messages. "The humans aren't just advancing quickly. They're remembering. But remembering what? And how?" Through the lab's window, Earth's colonies twinkled like stars, each one a point in humanity's growing network. Every transmission between them carried layers of hidden meaning, building toward something that the aliens couldn't quite see. Tep looked at the latest decoded message, feeling the chill run down his spine. Dr. Kerr, what if we're not discovering their secrets? What if they're teaching us something, piece by piece, preparing us for? For what? Val asked. But they all knew the answer, even if they couldn't say it. Humanity wasn't just building colonies or sharing technology. They were orchestrating something vast and ancient, using the Galactic Council's own protocols against them. And by the time anyone understood what was really happening, it would be far too late to stop it. The Grand Council chamber on the galactic capital world fell silent as the emergency meeting began. Hundreds of alien representatives sat in rising tiers, their attention focused on Ambassador Val, who stood at the center. Behind them, a massive screen showed the spread of human colonies across space, each point of light a reminder of how quickly things had changed. "We must act now," Val said, their voice echoing in the chamber. "The humans are expanding too fast, absorbing our technology too easily. They've established 50 new colonies in the time it takes most species to build 5. The head of the council, a tall being named Root, leaned forward. "What do you propose?" "We need to slow them down, restrict technology sharing, limit their expansion." Val gestured to the screen, where Dr. Kerr's research findings scrolled past. "Their behavior shows patterns that should be impossible. They're not just learning our technology. They're improving it in ways that suggest prior knowledge." Murmurs filled the chamber as the council members discussed this. On the screen, another human colony lit up, right on schedule, exactly where Dr. Kerr had predicted it would appear. "Very well," Root said finally. "We will vote on implementing restrictions." The vote passed quickly, too quickly, Kerr thought as they watched from their observer's seat. The council was scared, and scared people made hasty decisions. When Captain Reed and the human delegation arrived for the announcement, they showed no surprise. They stood calmly as Root explained the new restrictions. No more advanced drive systems, no more quantum communication technology, limited expansion rights. Reed smiled that same careful smile he always wore. "We understand the Council's concerns," he said. "Humanity will, of course, comply with these new guidelines." Something in his tone made Kerr's skin crawl. The humans were too calm, too accepting. They had to have known this was coming. As the human delegation left the chamber, Officer Tepp rushed in with new data. "Dr. Kerr, you need to see this." The screens changed, showing a new analysis of human activities. In the weeks leading up to the Council's decision, humans had already begun stockpiling technology. They had copied and improved every piece of alien equipment they'd been given. Their newest colonies were positioned to be self-sufficient. "They knew," Kerr whispered. "They knew we would try to restrict them, and they prepared for it." Val stared at the data in growing horror. "But how? How could they have predicted our exact response?" "Because they've seen it before," Kerr said, finally understanding. "Somehow, they've seen all of this before." The council erupted into chaos as more data poured in. Human colonies were already adapting, implementing improvements to alien technology that shouldn't have been possible. Their ships were faster, their communications clearer, their expansion continuing despite the restrictions. A message appeared on the main screen, a formal thank you from Earth for all the Council's help, signed by Captain Reed. But hidden in the message's code was something else, something that made Kerr's heart stop. Coordinates scattered across the galaxy, each marking the location of technology far more advanced than what the Council possessed. "We didn't restrict them," Kerr said, their voice shaking. "We just gave them an excuse to stop pretending they needed our help." Through the chamber's massive windows, they could see human ships moving through space, each one following paths that had been carefully planned long ago. The humans weren't just expanding. They were reclaiming territory, following a map that only they could see. Root's voice cut through the chaos. "How did we not see this coming?" But Kerr knew the answer. They had seen it coming. All of it. Every clue had been laid out for them. Every pattern had been clear. The humans had shown them exactly what was happening, piece by piece, knowing that no one would believe the truth until it was too late. As the council argued about what to do next, a final message came in from Captain Reed. It was short, simple, and terrifying in its implications. "Thank you for helping us come home." The pieces were finally falling into place, but the picture they formed was beyond anything the council had imagined. Humanity wasn't just another young species finding its way among the stars. They were something else entirely, and they had just used the council's own fears against them to complete the next phase of their plan. Dr. Kerr's hands shook as they stared at the test results. Around them, the Starweaver's main lab hummed with energy as dozens of screens displayed human brain scans. After months of study, they had finally found what they were looking for, but the truth was more incredible than anyone had imagined. "This can't be right," Officer Tepp said, checking the data for the 10th time. "The patterns in their neural structure. Run it again," Kerr ordered, though they already knew what they would find. The computer hummed, analyzing the brain patterns of hundreds of human subjects. The results were always the same. Ambassador Val burst into the lab, all four arms clutching data pads. "The Council's restrictions have failed. The humans aren't just ignoring them. They're advancing faster than ever." "Because they don't need our help," Kerr said quietly. "They never did. Look at this." They pulled up a new display, showing the structure of human DNA alongside their brain patterns. "We've been looking at this all wrong. Humans aren't learning our technology. They're remembering it." The lab fell silent as the implications sank in. On the screens, human DNA twisted and turned, revealing patterns that shouldn't exist in a young species. Encoded in their very genes was information, vast amounts of it, passed down through countless generations. "Their brains aren't just processing information," Kerr explained, pointing to the scans. "They're accessing genetic memory. Every human carries within them the accumulated knowledge of something ancient." "That's impossible," Val whispered, but the evidence was right there on the screens. A new message flashed. Another report from the human colonies. They had just developed a new form of quantum drive, one that the Council's own scientists had theorized, but never managed to build. Except it wasn't new at all. The designs matched technology that had existed millions of years ago, before the current Council, before the great gaps in galactic history. "Earth isn't their homeworld," Kerr said, the truth finally dawning. "It's their hiding place, a place where they could rebuild themselves from almost nothing." Tepp pulled up historical records, his fingers flying across the controls. "There are gaps in our history. Entire civilizations that vanished without explanation. What if humanity was one of them?" Kerr finished. "Not just one of them. Maybe the first of them. They didn't evolve on Earth. They chose it, hid there, reformed themselves at the most basic genetic level." The screens filled with new data as the computer completed its analysis. Human children didn't just learn. They remembered, accessing information buried deep in their DNA. Each generation unlocked a little more, following some vast plan laid down ages ago. "They're fiction," Tepp said suddenly. "All those stories about space, about advanced technology, they weren't imagining it. They were remembering it, piece by piece, generation by generation." Val moved to the main console, pulling up a map of human expansion. Every colony, every outpost. They're not exploring. They're retracing their own steps, reclaiming what they once had. "And we helped them do it," Kerr added. "Every piece of technology we shared, every star chart we gave them, it just helped them remember faster, unlock more of what was already buried in their genes." A final piece of data appeared on the screen, an analysis of human genetic drift. The computer had calculated backwards, trying to find when these changes had first appeared in human DNA. The number it showed was impossible. Over 1 million years ago. "They weren't lying to us," Kerr said, staring at the number. "They'd been completely honest. We just couldn't believe what they were telling us. Humanity isn't a young species taking its first steps into space. They're the oldest species we've ever encountered, finally coming home." Through the lab's window, Earth glowed blue and peaceful, looking for all the world like the cradle of a young civilization. But now, they knew better. It wasn't a cradle, it was a chrysalis, where humanity had waited, reformed itself, and prepared for the moment when they could return to the stars. And that moment had finally come. The Galactic Council's emergency chamber was in chaos. Representatives from 100 worlds shouted over each other as the latest reports came in. Human colonies were activating ancient technology across the galaxy, technology that had laid dormant for millions of years, waiting for the right signal to wake up. Ambassador Val stood at the center of the storm, watching as the massive display showed more and more systems lighting up with human activity. Dr. Kier and Officer Tepp worked frantically at nearby consoles, trying to track the rapid changes. "We have to stop them," someone shouted from the upper tiers. "How?" Val asked quietly. "Everything they've done has been within our laws, using our own protocols. We gave them permission for every step they took." The main doors slid open, and Captain Reed walked in. The chamber fell silent as he made his way to the center. He looked exactly the same as he had at their first meeting, calm, professional, with that careful smile that now held new meaning. "Captain," Root said from the council leader's position, "you've been summoned to explain humanity's actions." Reed nodded. "Of course, we're simply reclaiming what was ours. The catches of technology you're detecting. We put them there, long ago, before we had to retreat to Earth." "Impossible," a council member shouted. "Your species evolved on Earth." "No," Reed said softly. "We rebuilt ourselves on Earth." "There's a difference." He touched a control on his wrist, and the chamber's main display changed. It showed a galaxy-wide map of human expansion, but now overlaid with ancient star charts that the council had thought lost to time. "1 million years ago," Reed continued, "humanity faced a choice. We could fight a war we might not win, or we could play a longer game. We chose to hide, to start over. We encoded our knowledge into our DNA and found a quiet world where we could wait." Dr. Kier stepped forward. "Earth." Reed nodded. "Earth. We rebuilt ourselves from the cellular level up, knowing it would take thousands of generations to recover what we once were. But we were patient. We had to be." The display showed humanity's expansion pattern clearly now, a perfect match for ancient trade routes and hidden catches of technology. Each human colony was positioned to access these resources at exactly the right moment. "Your first contact protocols were familiar because we helped design them, ages ago," Reed explained. "We knew exactly how the Council would react to us, because we helped create the Council's predecessor. We've been guiding our own rediscovery, step by step." Val's forearms trembled. "The technology we shared with you helped us remember faster," Reed finished. "Thank you for that. Your presence accelerated our timetable considerably." New alerts flashed across the screens. More ancient systems were coming online, responding to signals from human colonies. Each one contained technology far beyond what the current council possessed. "You can't do this," Root declared. "The council forbids." "The council exists because we allowed it to," Reed said, his voice still calm but now carrying the weight of ages. "We've watched it grow, guide civilizations, maintain peace. You've done well. But now it's time for us to come home." Through the chamber's windows, they could see ships appearing, hundreds of them, thousands, emerging from hidden docks that had waited silent for eons. They were human ships, but unlike anything the Council had ever seen. "Don't be afraid," Reed said, looking around the chamber. "If we wanted to conquer, we would have done it long ago. We just want to remember who we were and help guide the galaxy again. We've learned much from our time on Earth. About patience, about growth, about starting over." Dr. Kier looked at their readings in awe. The genetic memories, the hidden technology, the perfect positioning of every colony. It was all planned. 1 million years ago, you planned all of this. Reed smiled, a real smile this time, not the careful one he'd worn for so long. Of course we did. We're human. Taking the long view is what we do best. As the council representatives watched in stunned silence, more ancient systems awakened across the galaxy. Humanity's plan, set in motion when the first stars were young, had finally come to fruition. They had hidden themselves away, encoded their knowledge in their very beings, and waited patiently for the perfect moment to return. And now, at last, they were home.